Statue of Liberty. The Statue of Liberty, Liberty Enlightening the World, French La Liberté éclairant le monde, is a colossal neoclassical sculpture on Liberty Island in New York Harbor within New York City. The copper-clad statue, a gift to the United States from the people of France, was designed by French sculptor Frédéric Auguste Bartholdi, and its metal framework was built by Gustave Eiffel. The statue was dedicated on October 28, 1886. The statue is a figure of a classically draped woman, likely inspired by the Roman goddess of liberty, Libertas. In a contrapposto pose, she holds a torch above her head with her right hand, and in her left hand carries a tabula ansata inscribed July Murphs M. de Clank 66, July 4th, 1796 in Roman numerals, the date of the U.S. Declaration of Independence. With her left foot, she steps on a broken chain and shackle, commemorating the national abolition of slavery following the American Civil War. After its dedication, the statue became an icon of freedom and of the United States, seen as a symbol of welcome to immigrants arriving by sea. The idea for the statue was conceived in 1865, when the French historian and abolitionist Edouard de Laboulaye proposed a monument to commemorate the upcoming centennial of U.S. independence, 1876, the perseverance of American democracy, and the liberation of the nation's slaves. 14. The Franco-Prussian War delayed progress until 1875, when Laboulaye proposed that the people of France finance the statue and the United States provide the site and build the pedestal. Bartholdi completed the head and the torch-bearing arm before the statue was fully designed, and these pieces were exhibited for publicity at international expositions. Development. According to the National Park Service, the idea of a monument presented by the French people to the United States was first proposed by Édouard René de Laboulaye, president of the French Anti-Slavery Society and a prominent and important political thinker of his time. The project is traced to a mid-1865 conversation between Laboulaye, a staunch abolitionist, and Frédéric Auguste Bartholdi, a sculptor. In after-dinner conversation at his home near Versailles, Laboulaye, an ardent supporter of the Union in the American Civil War, is supposed to have said, "If a monument should rise in the United States as a memorial to their independence, I should think it only natural if it were built by united effort, a common work of both our nations." The National Park Service, in a 2000 report, however, deemed this a legend traced to an 1885 fundraising pamphlet, and that the statue was most likely conceived in 1870 abolition of slavery and the Union's victory in the Civil War in 1865. Laboulaye's wishes of freedom and democracy were turning into a reality in the United States. In order to honor these achievements, Laboulaye proposed that a gift be built for the United States on behalf of France. Laboulaye hoped that by calling attention to the recent achievements of the United States, the French people would be inspired to call for their own democracy in the face of a repressive monarchy. Bartholdi had made a first model of his concept in 1870. 27. The son of a friend of Bartholdi's, artist John Lafarge, later maintained that Bartholdi made the first sketches for the statue during his visit to Lafarge's Rhode Island studio. Bartholdi continued to develop the concept following his return to France. 27. He also worked on a number of sculptures designed to bolster French patriotism after the defeat by the Prussians. One of these was the Lion of Belfort, a monumental sculpture carved in sandstone below the fortress of Belfort, which during the war had resisted a Prussian siege for over 3 months. The defiant lion, 73 feet, 22 millimeters, long and half that in height, displays an emotional quality characteristic of Romanticism, which Bartholdi would later bring to the Statue of Liberty. Design, style, and symbolism, Bartholdi and Laboulaye considered how best to express the idea of American liberty. 29. In early American history, 2 female figures were frequently used as cultural symbols of the 18th century nation. One of these symbols, the personified Columbia, was seen as an embodiment of the United States in the manner that Britannia was identified with the United Kingdom, and Marianne came to represent France. Columbia had supplanted the traditional European personification of the Americas as an Indian princess, which had come to be regarded as uncivilized and derogatory toward Americans. 30. The other significant female icon in American culture was a representation of liberty derived from libertas, the goddess of freedom widely worshipped in ancient Rome, especially among emancipated slaves. Artists of the 18th and 19th centuries striving to evoke republican ideals commonly used representations of libertas as an allegorical symbol. 29. A figure of liberty was also depicted on the Great Seal of France. 29. However, Bartholdi and Laboulaye avoided an image of revolutionary liberty such as that depicted in Eugène Delacroix's famed Liberty Leading the People, 1830. In this painting, which commemorates France's July Revolution, a half-clothed Liberty leads an armed mob over the bodies of the fallen. 30 Laboulaye had no sympathy for revolution, and so Bartholdi's figure would be fully dressed in flowing robes. Instead of the impression of violence in the Delacroix work, Bartholdi wished to give the statue a peaceful appearance and chose a torch, representing progress, for the figure to hold. Its second toe on both feet is longer than its big toe, a condition known as Morton's toe or Greek foot. This was an aesthetic staple of ancient Greek art and reflects the classical influences on the statue. Crawford's statue was designed in the early 1850s. It was originally to be crowned with a pallias or liberty cap, the cap given to emancipated slaves in ancient Rome. Secretary of War Jefferson Davis, a Southerner who would later serve as President of the Confederate States of America, was concerned that the pallias would be taken as an abolitionist symbol. He ordered that it be changed to a helmet. 35 Delacroix's figure wears a pallias, 30, and Bartholdi at first considered placing one on his figure as well. Instead, he used a radiate halo, nimbus, to top its head. In so doing, he avoided a reference to Marianne, who invariably wears a pallias. Many believe they evoke the sun, the 7 seas, and the 7 continents, and represent another means, besides the torch, whereby liberty enlightens the world. But research has not confirmed this. 12 Bartholdi's early models were all similar in concept. A female figure in neoclassical style representing liberty, wearing a stola and pella, gown and cloak, common in depictions of Roman goddesses, and holding a torch aloft. According to popular accounts, the face was modeled after that of Augusta Charlotte Basser, Bartholdi, the sculptor's mother. But Regis Huber, the curator of the Bartholdi Museum, is on record as saying that this, as well as other similar speculations, have no basis in fact. 40. He designed the figure with austere face and a strong, uncomplicated silhouette, which would be set off well by its dramatic harbor placement and allow passengers on vessels entering New York Bay to experience a changing perspective on the statue as they proceeded toward Manhattan. He gave it bold classical contours and applied simplified modeling, reflecting the huge scale of the project and its solemn purpose. Bartholdi wrote of his technique, "The surfaces should be broad and simple, defined by a bold and clear design, accentuated in the important places. The enlargement of the details or their multiplicity is to be feared. By exaggerating the forms, in order to render them more clearly visible, or by enriching them with details, we would destroy the proportion of the work. Finally, the model, like the design, should have a summarized character, such as one would give to a rapid sketch. Only it is necessary that this character should be the product of volition and study, and that the artist, concentrating his knowledge, should find the form and the line in its greatest simplicity." Bartholdi made alterations in the design as the project evolved. Bartholdi considered having Liberty hold a broken chain, but decided this would be too divisive in the days after the Civil War. The erected statue does stride over a broken chain, half hidden by her robes and difficult to see from the ground. Her right foot is raised and set back in a classical contrapposto pose that looks stationary when viewed from the front, but dynamic when viewed from the side, signifying a solid footing and a posture more relaxed than that of 2 feet set side by side, and introducing a sense of tension between standing and moving forward, both physically and mentally. The upright form and outstretched leg may have also helped to stabilize the statue. Bartholdi was initially uncertain of what to place in Liberty's left hand. He settled on a tabula ansata, used to evoke the concept of law. 43. Though Bartholdi greatly admired the United States Constitution, he chose to inscribe July 4, 1776 on the tablet, thus associating the date of the country's Declaration of Independence with the concept of liberty. Announcement and early work. By 1875, France was enjoying improved political stability and a recovering post-war economy. Growing interest in the upcoming Centennial Exposition, to be held in Philadelphia, led Laboulaye to decide it was time to seek public support. In September 1875, he announced the project and the formation of the Franco-American Union as its fundraising arm. With the announcement, the statue was given a name, Liberty Enlightening the World. The French people were to finance the statue, contrary to the common misconception of it being funded by the French national government. 49. And Americans would be expected to pay for the pedestal. 50. The announcement provoked a generally favorable reaction in France, though many Frenchmen resented the United States for not coming to their aid during the war with Prussia. French monarchists opposed the statue, if for no other reason than it was proposed by the liberal Laboulaye, who had recently been elected a senator for life. 50. Laboulaye arranged events designed to appeal to the rich and powerful, including a special performance at the Paris Opera on April 25, 1876, that featured a new cantata by the composer Charles Gounod. The piece was titled La Liberté éclairant le monde. The French version of the statue's announced name initially focused on the elites. The Union was successful in raising funds from across French society. School children and ordinary citizens gave, as did 181 French municipalities. Laboulaye's political allies supported the call, as did descendants of the French contingent in the American Revolutionary War. Less idealistically, contributions came from those who hoped for American support in the French attempt to build the Panama Canal. The copper may have come from multiple sources, and some of it is said to have come from a mine in Visen, Norway, though this has not been conclusively determined after testing samples. According to Kara Sutherland in her book on the statue for the Museum of the City of New York, 200,000 pounds, 91,000 kilograms, was needed to build the statue, and the French copper industrialist Eugène Secretan donated 128,000 pounds, 58,000 kilograms, of copper construction in France. By 1875, France was enjoying improved political stability and a recovering post-war economy. Growing interest in the upcoming Centennial Exposition, to be held in Philadelphia, led Laboulaye to decide it was time to seek public support. In September 1875, he announced the project and the formation of the Franco-American Union as its fundraising arm. With the announcement, the statue was given a name, Liberty Enlightening the World. The French people were to finance the statue, contrary to the common misconception of it being funded by the French national government. 49. And Americans would be expected to pay for the pedestal. 50. The announcement provoked a generally favorable reaction in France, though many Frenchmen resented the United States for not coming to their aid during the war with Prussia. French monarchists opposed the statue, if for no other reason than it was proposed by the liberal Laboulaye, who had recently been elected a senator for life. Laboulaye arranged events designed to appeal to the rich and powerful, including a special performance at the Paris Opera on April 25, 1876, that featured a new cantata by the composer Charles Gounod. The piece was titled La Liberté éclairant le monde, the French version of the statue's announced name. Initially focused on the elites, the Union was successful in raising funds from across French society. School children and ordinary citizens gave, as did 181 French municipalities. Laboulaye's political allies supported the call, as did descendants of the French contingent in the American Revolutionary War. Less idealistically, contributions came from those who hoped for American support in the French attempt to build the Panama Canal. The copper may have come from multiple sources, and some of it is said to have come from a mine in Visen, Norway. 51. Though this has not been conclusively determined after testing samples. 52. According to Kara Sutherland in her book on the statue for the Museum of the City of New York, 200,000 pounds, 91,000 kilograms, was needed to build the statue, and the French copper industrialist Eugène Secretan donated 128,000 pounds, 58,000 kilograms of copper. On his return to Paris in 1877, Bartholdi concentrated on completing the head, which was exhibited at the 1878 Paris World's Fair. Fundraising continued, with models of the statue put on sale. Tickets to view the construction activity at the Gaget, Gautier and Company workshop were also offered, Ponentieri 63. The French government authorized a lottery. Among the prizes were valuable silver plate and a terracotta model of the statue. By the end of 1879, about 250,000 francs had been raised. The foundation of Bartholdi's statue was to be laid inside Fort Wood, a disused army base on Bedloes Island, constructed between 1807 and 1811. Since 1823, it had rarely been used, though during the Civil War, it had served as a recruiting station. 86. The fortifications of the structure were in the shape of an 11-point star. The statue's foundation and pedestal were aligned so that it would face southeast, greeting ships entering the harbor from the Atlantic Ocean. In 1881, the New York Committee commissioned Richard Morris Hunt to design the pedestal. Within months, Hunt submitted a detailed plan indicating that he expected construction to take about 9 months. 88. He proposed a pedestal 114 feet in height. Faced with money problems, the committee reduced that to 89 feet m. Hunt's pedestal design contains elements of classical architecture, including Doric portals, as well as some elements influenced by Aztec architecture. The large mass is fragmented with architectural detail in order to focus attention on the statue. 89. In form, it is a truncated pyramid, 62 feet square at the base and 39.4 feet, 12.0 at the top. The 4 sides are identical in appearance. Above the door on each side, there are 10 discs upon which Bartholdi proposed to place the coats of arms of the states. Between 1876 and 1889, there were 38 of them, although this was not done. Above that, a balcony was placed on each side, framed by pillars. Bartholdi placed an observation platform near the top of the pedestal, above which the statue itself rises. 90. According to author Louis Auchincloss, the pedestal craggily evokes the power of an ancient Europe, over which rises the dominating figure of the Statue of Liberty. 89. The committee hired former Army General Charles Pomeroy Stone to oversee the construction work. 91. Construction on the 15-foot deep, 4.6 meters foundation began in 1897-1883, and the pedestal's cornerstone was laid in 1884. In Hunt's original conception, the pedestal was to have been made of solid granite. Financial concerns again forced him to revise his plans. The final design called for poured concrete walls, up to 20 feet, 6.1 min thick, faced with granite blocks. Actually, this Stony Creek granite came from the Beatty Quarry in Branford, Connecticut. 94. The concrete mass was the largest poured to that time. 93. Norwegian immigrant civil engineer Joachim Gauschen-Gever designed the structural framework for the Statue of Liberty. His work involved design computations, detailed fabrication and construction drawings, and oversight of construction. In completing his engineering for the statue's frame, Gever worked from drawings and sketches produced by Gustave Eiffel. On June 17, 1885, the French steamer Isère ship arrived in New York with the crates holding the disassembled statue on board. New Yorkers displayed their newfound enthusiasm for the statue. 200,000 people lined the docks and hundreds of boats put to sea to welcome the ship. After 5 months' daily calls to donate to the Statue Fund, on August 11, 1885, the world announced that $102,000 had been raised from 120,000 donors, and that 80% of the total had been received in sums of less than $1, equivalent to $35 in 2024. 112. Even with the success of the fund drive, the pedestal was not completed until April 1886. Immediately thereafter, reassembly of the statue began. Eiffel's iron framework was anchored to steel I-beams within the concrete pedestal and assembled. 113. Once this was done, the sections of skin were carefully attached. 114. Due to the width of the pedestal, it was not possible to erect scaffolding, and workers dangled from ropes while installing the skin sections. 115. Bartholdi had planned to put floodlights on the torch's balcony to illuminate it. A week before the dedication, the Army Corps of Engineers vetoed the proposal, fearing that ship's pilots passing the statue would be blinded. Instead, Bartholdi cut portholes in the torch, which was covered with gold leaf, and placed the lights inside them. A power plant was installed on the island to light the torch and for other electrical needs. After the skin was completed, landscape architect Frederick Law Olmsted, co-designer of Manhattan's Central Park and Brooklyn's Prospect Park, supervised a cleanup of Bedloe's Island in anticipation of the dedication. 118. General Charles Stone claimed on the day of dedication that no man had died during the construction of the statue. This was not true, as Francis Longo, a 39-year-old Italian laborer, had been killed when an old wall fell on him. When built, the statue was reddish-brown and shiny, but within 20 years it had oxidized to its current green color through reactions with air, water, and acidic pollution, forming a layer of verdigris which protects the copper from further corrosion.